Hello and welcome. We're going to continue now with the HR challenge, and this is part 4, managing talent performance, i.e. your performance management strategy. And in this performance management strategy, there are 2 or 3 things I want to cover. The first, I want to talk about the idea of a high performance mindset, what it means and how you can think about integrating that into what you do with talent. And the second thing I want to talk about is the 2 elements of performance management, one being the goals and objectives that come out of the key accountabilities and the targets, and the other being obviously the development, the professional development plan. And then I want to go and I want to look at the elements of the actual performance review process itself, and there are a number of elements to that. So let's jump right in. We'll open up the guide and the workbook and we'll go through it step by step. So here we have the workbook. You can see here it's the exact same as the other workbooks. The HR challenge part 4, managing talent performance, your performance management strategy. And the elements of this, let's just walk through them. The first is the introduction, which you will be familiar with. It's the exact same as you've seen before, outlining the 4 elements of the winning strategy, finding talent, your recruitment strategy, your engagement strategy, your L&D strategy, and your performance management strategy, the one we're looking at now, which is an answer to these questions that HR professionals shared with us as being the key challenges that they are faced with at this point in time. Then we get to part 4, and the first thing we sort of look at is the tips for building a high performance culture. And I want to talk about this a little bit before I actually get into the actual performance review itself. What are the elements? Hire people who believe they're responsible for their actions, make sure your employees have a growth mindset, and so on. Things that you can do to build a high performance mindset in individuals. I think you should be looking for in terms of high performance mindset. I think you should certainly be building into your development of individuals. And then we look at the performance review, the preparatory exercise, and the review process. So let's jump right down here and start with the review process. And I wrote down here tips to building a high performance culture, and the performance review has been the 2 elements we're going to look at. And performance management, in our experience, performance management is something that people don't like. And they don't like because it's about giving feedback to people. Typically it's bad feedback, it's bad news, it rarely seems to be good news. And people feel uncomfortable with it. They don't seem to have the skills or the tools or whatever to actually give performance reviews. But I think equally important is they're not sure what they're reviewing. It's very, very hard to review when you don't have a benchmark. Very hard to review when you can't say, well, this is what was expected. Here was the expected performance. Here's the actual performance. And in terms of goals and objectives, it's somewhat easier in KPIs. In terms of development of the individual, to match them effectively with a role or for succession planning and so on and so forth, it's more difficult. So I think that the model that we have proposed to you so far, in terms of benchmarking the role, comparing the individuals to it, having the key accountabilities, having the gap report and the development plan. So you have 2 things, you end up with 2 pieces. You end up with this statement of key accountability, the top 5 deliverables of the role, metrics of success, ranked 1 to 5, metrics of success. And then you can put targets against those. What to expect to see in 36 months, 24 months, 12 months, 90 days, 30 days, whatever. You can actually take those key deliverables and build out goals and objectives and targets and lead and lag indicators and so on from that exercise. So it's very, very clear for an individual what they're being measured against, and very clear for a reviewer what they're reviewing performance against. The second element, if you do the development plan, you now have a very, very clear professional development plan for superior performance in that role or indeed in another role that the person might be aspiring towards. And you then have a very, very clear metric, what you're measuring against. They either did or did not do the development. They either have or have not shown to change the behaviour or emotional quotient or whatever it is that we're trying to grow and develop, or a hard skill or whatever. They've either done it or they haven't done it. So it sort of puts an edge to all of this. It makes it very, very simple. It also means that I want you to imagine I'm the reviewer and I'm reviewing you. And instead of you being out there and me being here, the 2 of us are sitting here side by side, and we're looking at the performance. And the questions that we're asking is, okay, it's not about my opinion of you or me wagging my finger at you. It's me saying to you, okay, what happened? What's working, what's not working, what can we do about it? Really, that's what it comes down to. I.e., how do we grow a superior performance? How do I help you become a superior performer? And that fundamentally is the role of the manager to support and develop the team so they become superior performers. So let's go down and have a look at it, because I think this is a very simple approach. Before we jump into it, I want to talk about the tips I mentioned to build a high performance culture or a high performance mindset. And it's there, a little map of them there showing you what they are. But let's talk about them one by one. First, I've highlighted a few pieces of text here. Every manager knows that employee mindset can be decisive in determining the success or failure of an individual, a team or organization. What's going on between their ears is decisive, a mindset. And by a high performance mindset, what we mean is the world view the person has, how they communicate, and whether they can execute with precision, clarity and alignment with core values. The Merriam-Webster dictionary defines a performance mindset as the execution of an action. On the other hand, it defines high performance mindset. So performance mindset as the execution of an action, high performance mindset as better, faster, more efficient than others and producing results much higher than expected. So high performance mindset is sort of a mental tool for increasing competence and increasing performance. And people with a high performance mindset possess specific characteristics, and these characteristics are learned. They're developed through years. They're not something that people are born with. They're achieved through hard work, effort and consistency. So let's look at them, because I think they're really important. I think they're really important things for you to consider in terms of performance management and how you develop people. Hire people who believe they're responsible for their actions, i.e. people who take ownership. They say they believe in free will, they believe they're in charge of their own decisions and actions, and they believe that as a consequence they're responsible for the outcomes of those actions. And that is like critical. I actually believe that in terms of leadership and development, that's the single most important thing. When I'm hiring somebody, that's the single most important thing I'm looking for, that they take ownership of their actions and the outcomes of their actions. Interestingly, when we talk about the top leadership competencies, the top 5 leadership competencies, we don't talk about goal setting. We talk about goal achievement. And high performance mindset is about goal achievement, setting and achieving the goals. Not enough to say I tried. High performance mindset is about achieving the goals and in fact exceeding them. Make sure your employees have a growth mindset. And American psychologist Carol Dweck, in a career study, she did these studies at Stanford University, and she looked at people who believed their intelligence and skills were fixed and stable, and those who believed in fact they could be developed and they could be grown. And the people who believed they could be grown had a higher performance mindset. They were more persistent, more committed, and ultimately much more successful in their jobs and in their personal lives than those who believed they were fixed, that they couldn't grow and develop. So again, you want people who believe in growth, with a growth mindset. And remember the questions that I showed you that come out of the job report. You can use these questions and you can build questions into the interview process, into the selection process, into the development process around these issues that are really, really helpful. Cultivate a culture of freedom, responsibility and growth. So psychological research has shown that both the belief in free will and growth mindset are not fixed or unchangeable. So here are some of the actions that you can do. Setting goals, clear, specific and realistic. So we all know what the SMART goals. This is people with high performance mindset do this. So if you want to actually help people become a high performance individual and develop a high performance mindset in individuals, help them set goals, clear, specific, realistic goals that they can actually achieve. And again, I've got little tips there on how you can go about doing it. Effort and consistency, this is really, really important. I believe fundamentally in habits, and I've got in here, I've got all about habits. Think about your habits. Are they bringing you closer to the life you want, or are they pushing you away? Make a list of the habits you want to develop, the ones you want to end and the ones you want to continue. So start, stop, continue around your habits. Positive daily habits and routines can create momentum and help you develop a high performance mindset. So for example, getting up in the morning at the same time, having a morning routine like meditation, journaling, exercise, all these kind of things are really important. Develop routines, building habits into your life. All high performance people with high performance mindsets have routines, they've discipline in their lives. Employ visualization for motivations. Develop a hardiness, developing a hardiness to respond to setbacks with energy and confidence. So visualize things that go wrong. Visualize fear. Visualize the whole thing going pear-shaped, and then think about what would you do about it if it went wrong. What's the worst that can happen, and how would I deal with it? And develop hardiness. At the same time, of course, focus on the positives. The 5 P's. Proper preparation prevents poor performance. James Baker, George Bush's former chief of staff. So high performance people know the value of the 5 P's, and they practice them throughout their working years. And think about how can you build those 5 P's into your performance culture. Focus. You need a vision, you need to focus on what you can achieve, that's key, and don't talk about it, take action. So how can you build this focus into performance management when you're working with people? All of these things are critical for performance. Caring and listening. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Really interesting. Listening is respect. And we say that in a survey of CEOs said that 45% said they spend 45% of their time listening. So listening is as intelligent an act as talking. And it's really interesting. In the performance review document I'm going to show you, there's a big section on listening and active listening and how to go about it. The failure quotient, all I'm going to say here is learn how to respond to failure. Like what we want is confidence, which is linked to skills we have in proportion to the job, to what we're trying to accomplish. That's it. And so that's why matching people to the job is very, very important. So they know they've got the skills, they know they have what it takes, they know what's required, and they're able to build this failure quotient. They're able to accept that they can fail. They embrace failure and they call it learning. I know this all sounds very cliched, but this is very, very real. And they respond, high performance people with a high performance mindset, they respond to failure by keeping going, not by giving up, they keep going. I'm a runner, and I've always told my children that one of the key things for me, one of the key learnings I had in running was to keep going. So when I was running, when I lived as a younger person in my parents' home, the last hill up to the house, there was a manhole in the middle of the road just before the gate into my parents' house. And I can still remember coming up that hill, coming up that hill. But I said, no matter what, if I had to crawl, I was going to make it to the manhole before I stopped. And I used to tell my children this story and tell them that what that did was, that meant that whenever I was faced with something, I just didn't give up, because I developed this habit in my running. And so developing these kind of habits, this idea of not giving up, keeping going, when you're struggling, when things aren't working out for you, you just keep going. And my old chairman used to say to me, he said, Paul, he said, the secret is to be there at the end. Keep going, get up, keep going, you got to be there at the end. Everything gets divvied up at the end, all the rewards are at the end, all the results are at the end, but you have to be there. And so keep going. When I talked earlier about training, remember we talked about leadership development and EQ, become active in all areas of EQ, builds resilience and an anti-fragile mindset. This is critical for this high performance mindset. I've written down that people tend to become what they think of themselves. So as we work on ourselves to become exceptional, to build this kind of thinking, we transform ourselves and we move away from learned helplessness and we move into the whole area of high performance. Think differently, develop courage. The idea of thinking differently. I love frugality. When you don't have a lot of resources, because it drives innovation, it forces you to think outside the box and think differently. And coming from that, you develop courage. Have fun and humour. And final thoughts, only with effort, consistency, courage and humour as part of your everyday life can you reach the higher levels of performance. So we're talking here about performance management, we're talking about developing a high performance mindset. These are some thoughts for you, a few pages of thoughts there that you should read through and ask yourself the question, how can you bring those into the conversation with people? How can you develop a culture in the organisation of a high performance mindset? Okay, let's look at the performance review. So I just want to talk about the purpose of the performance review again. I've said it here and I want to say it again. The purpose of the performance review is to improve performance. And to do this, we need a baseline and a target and a timeline. Then we can review process. We can't review progress if we don't have a baseline. How can we say, you have to have a baseline, say, yeah, we've improved from that baseline. And we had a target and we had a timeline to get from A to B. So we have to have A, we have to set the target B, so the baseline A, the target B, and the amount of time it's going to take. Otherwise, we can't really review progress. The foundation stones, as I said earlier, are the key accountabilities and the development plan, the personal and professional development plan. The key accountabilities are the basis for the goals, the targets, the KPIs, and the development plan for all job, person, gap, competence development, and indeed for development for future roles. I want to read this piece to you, just this paragraph to you. The purpose of the review is to enable and encourage reflection and thinking about the individual's performance, strengths, and responsibilities. To help the individual formulate their own professional development plan. To provide a model to help them discuss with and get feedback and input from a supervisor or peer, and to support their and the group's efforts and goals. So that's the purpose of the review. There are two parts to the review: the self-review and then the review by the supervisor. The self-review is sort of interesting. The purpose of this is to get the person being reviewed to review their own performance in advance. So we have a template for them and how to do it. I'm going to jump down here and show you this. This gets them ready for a meaningful conversation when the review comes around. So responsibilities, for example, state your understanding of your main duties and responsibilities. What is the purpose of my job? Why does it exist? So now we're saying, hang on, have they read the key accountability statements? Do they understand what the goals and targets, what the metrics of success? Do they understand this? What are the main outputs or results of the job? What are the main responsibilities of it? Are there additional tasks I would like to add to my job? So now they're in the job a month, 6 months, a year. What do they think? Do they think it should be a bit different? Are the tasks responsible I feel I should not belong to my job, to my particular role? And then performance. And what have been my expectations for the job, and have they been met? Has the past month been good, bad, satisfactory, or otherwise for me? And why? Did I reach my goals, my KPIs? And if not, why not? What do I consider to be my most important achievement for the period? And how would I evaluate my performance? This is like really, really important. You want the individual to self-reflect and say, hang on, what's going on? Am I delivering? Am I performing? Is this high performance or not? And you want them to start thinking this way rather than you are giving them the feedback. Have them feedback to themselves first, and then see how clear they are, how well they understand their successes and failures, their strengths and weaknesses and so on, their role and what's expected of them. Are they clear around it, so you can actually work through that with them to make sure that they are. In the review process with the reviewer, the document opens with notes on the purpose of the review. As a performance improvement reviewer, your commitment in this process is to the learning for the person being reviewed. Your responsibility is not to provide answers, but to ask questions, to actively listen, and to facilitate greater awareness and clarity for both yourself and the person being reviewed. Please review the first section well in advance and prepare your notes, comments, questions, etc. And then it has talked about active listening, the ability to focus completely on what the person is saying, understand the meaning in terms of the context of the person's desires, attend to the person's personal agenda, and so on. It talks about powerful questioning, what it is, creating awareness, what it is, and then it gets down to the actual review process proper. It talks about the responsibilities, the objectives, and so on. Now, what I want to do now is I'm going to jump over to the actual review, performance review document, and just walk through the performance review document with you very briefly, but so that you're very, very clear about what I've just discussed, and you can see it in the actual document that the person will work with. So performance, name, position, time in the present position, period covered, date and time, reviewer, and whatever notes you want. And here we have the purpose of the performance review. Is very, very clear to both the reviewer and the reviewee. In preparation for your review meeting, you think in broad terms about the following. So this is for the reviewer and the reviewee, both of them. And then you've got the preparatory exercise, the self-review. And you're asking the individual to do this review on themselves and send it back to the reviewer at a particular date and time. This allows the reviewee to be fluent and clear and ready for the conversation because they've thought about all the questions that are going to be asked of them and all the issues that are going to be raised. And it gives the reviewer an opportunity to actually see what the person is thinking, highlight areas you want to discuss with them, so they're not going in and just making it up as they go along. So here we have the responsibilities. We've seen these already. Why the job exists, what's the purpose, main responsibilities. And then the performance, expectations, good, bad or indifferent month, did I achieve my goals or not? Motivation and change. What's my motivation level? What elements of the job do I find most difficult? What do elements of the job interest me most? What if anything is bothering me? What do I think I should stop doing, continue doing, or start doing? What do I like and dislike about working for this organisation? What are my strengths? How do they relate to performance on the job? What style do they produce? How do they help? What skills can I learn? What experience can I have to build these into talents, or these talents into genuine strengths, I should say? What action can be taken to improve my performance in my current position? How can I use my strengths to achieve the required outcomes of my responsibility? Competencies. What do I think are the 4 competencies, the knowledge, skill, attitude, etc. required, absolutely required, to be successful in the role? 1, 2, 3 and 4. And then for each of them, what gaps do I have in filling this role? How can these gaps be bridged? Who can help? What's involved? How long will it take? Can I wait? Are the resources available? And then down to goals. What are the goals for the medium term, say 3-12 months? Input things to do with outputs, results. And that's an interesting thing to discuss, because you already have done up the key deliverables. You'll put targets, goals and objectives, 12 months, 3 months and so on in front of them. Input, lead and lag indicators. So lead being input goals, lag being output goals or results. And maybe they disagree with them. Maybe they've got inputs there they want to say, well, hang on, maybe we need to change these. What personal professional development, getting better at what I do? Personal focus. What do I consider to be the most important aim and task for the next 90, 30 days? Really, really interesting exercise to see how clear is the person, and are they in agreement with their supervisor on what in fact this role is supposed to accomplish over the next month to 3 months. And that can be quite enlightening when you realise that their view on what the responsibilities of the job, the priority of the role, the input and output goals, what they're supposed to be accomplishing, might be quite different to yours. And you need to go back to the key accountabilities, go back and look at all of this again and go through to make sure we're all in agreement, and maybe change them. Maybe you'll have input from the person doing the job. They actually, we need to change the key deliverables of this role. We need to change the goals and targets, perhaps. What are the main obstacles? What's stopping me from being successful, and how can I overcome them? Structure. What do I think is the appropriate order of structure? To whom should I report and who should report to me? And draw the structure. Who are my peers? Who's in support? Is this the best structure? How can it be improved? Who will be impacted, and so on? Feedback. How will I install more user, accurate and fast feedback? What kind of regular structured two-way review would I like to see? So that's the review process they do. It helps them think about all the key issues before they go into the review. And then in the review process, here's what the reviewer needs to do. The first is active listening. And there's notes here on what active listening is about, what powerful questioning is about, what creating awareness is about. And it's really, really important that with anybody who's doing a review, that they understand and they've been coached and they've been developed and they've been trained in this. Otherwise the review is really for nothing. They must understand what their role is, how to listen, how to question, and how to create awareness and support the individual. And then it goes through the review process, which is very similar to the one that the individual did themselves. What kind of picture do you have of your responsibility right now? These are the questions you'd ask. What's your main purpose? Depending on the response, then ask, what about on a day-to-day basis? What about in the context of the team or the organisation? What do you feel are the core elements of your responsibility? What do you most like about your responsibility, and so on. A whole series of questions around this. Your objectives, what are they? Your goals and objectives. Your competencies. When filling the exercise, what you notice? Were any surprises there? What areas are you happy with? What areas are you hard on yourself? What areas do you need more support and development on? And so on. The support structure. The obstacles, again, asking questions around the obstacles of the individual and trying to identify what can you do and how can you help. What support can you offer? What training development needs they feel they have? Feedback, again, the same kind of thing. And then a summary review and action steps. What does all this amount to? How would you summarise your efforts so far? What will you take away from this, and how would you put it all together? What action will you take and when? Where do you go from here, and what are the next steps? So I've also got a competency assessment for each of the 25 competencies that you may wish to go through. So in summary, here are the parts of performance management as I understand it. Number one, we're trying to build a high performance mindset, a high performance mentality in the individuals and the organizations. It is critical for performance management. If you want to manage performance, that's the number one thing you need to build in the organization. And sort of a cultural thing. You do it person by person, but sort of a cultural thing. Two, you need in the review process or before the review process that you have the following things in place. Agreed key accountabilities, key deliverables, ranked with metrics of success and targets. And the person knows this is what I'm supposed to achieve, this is what I'm supposed to accomplish. And then a personal and professional development plan to bridge the gaps between the person's skill set and what the job requires. Or if they're going to another job, what that job requires. So they have their own professional development plan. So these two things. Then we go into the review process. And in the review process, the first part of the review process is the reviewee reviews themselves. They go through a process. The idea of this process is to bring front of mind, to help them think, to prompt them, to help them understand what are the issues that they need to be focusing on for a good performance review. So where do I need to be looking? What are the issues? Where do I need help? What do I want to discuss with my reviewer? Then we get to the reviewer proper, and there's the first part of that is him as the reviewer understanding concepts like active listening, powerful questioning, and so on and so forth. If you haven't worked on that, you really need to work on that with anybody who's doing a performance review. They need to understand how to coach, how to mentor, how to develop people. All these kind of key skills that need to be developed in these. Otherwise, the performance reviews typically are not successful. And then they have to go through the performance review proper. And again, they're following a similar format to the one the reviewee did on themselves, but they're asking questions around these areas and trying to develop clarity. And then coming to the end of it, coming up with action points, where they can then take those action points and build them into the development plan. So they can take the key things that the person said they need to work on, they need to grow to, pop them into the person's development plan, and that becomes part of the next development plan they're going to do over, let's say, the next 30 days or 90 days or whatever it is between the performance reviews, and away they go. So performance management and performance review, that is my approach to it. Now think about this for a moment. Just want to take right back to the very beginning. Impossible to do that if you haven't done the first step. And the first step back in the recruitment strategy, the first step is benchmarking the role, coming up with the key deliverables, measuring the requirements for success in the role, measuring people against it, coming up with the gap reports, putting the development plans in place. That's the foundation of everything. When you have that in place, you can then go through the engagement process. So you start onboarding the person effectively, how they work with their boss, how will they work with a team, how they fit into the culture of the organisation. You put a development plan in place so they know they fit the job, they know they've got a career progression in front of them, they show them the next career steps and so on and so forth. All these key things for engagement. And then you put the L&D in place. The L&D is looking at their personal professional development plan and giving them the skills, training them and supporting them in that, and in other areas in the team and the organisation where they need development, or where the team or the organisation need development. And then finally, an ongoing performance management, performance review process to help that person to work closely with them. Interestingly, when we carry out stress assessments on organisations, one of the key questions is, do I get feedback, meaningful feedback? Like proper performance reviews, professional performance reviews, ongoing feedback, ongoing support from my manager. It's one of the key questions, and it's one of the key questions where organisations continuously fail because they're doing it incorrectly. So that's the totality. We're sort of wrapping up the whole process now. That is the 4 steps, if you wish. Your recruitment strategy, your engagement strategy, your L&D strategy, and your performance management strategy. They're the 4 elements, the 4 strategies of the winning strategy to address the HR challenge. All those questions and all those challenges that HR professionals told us they're faced with right now. I hope you found these workbooks in this video series of value to you. I strongly encourage you to take the thinking here and apply it in your own organisation. And at the risk of annoying you, you know the old cliche, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, the second best time is today. The exact same is true of this. Don't say, oh my God, you're too far along, I have too many other issues to deal with, there's too many people here. No, take one role, benchmark one role, and start with that one role, and then the next role, implement the system one little piece at a time. Once you've it all up on the wall, speaking metaphorically, and you can see it all in front of you, and even if you're doing different bits and pieces of it, you're building the model in its totality. And it is the model for finding, retaining talent, advancing that talent, developing that talent, and creating superior performance at an individual, team and organisational level. So I wish you the best of luck. And remember where we are. Any support that we can give you here at TTI Success Insights Ireland, we are more than happy to do so, and to share these tools with you and these processes and systems with you. Thank you very much.